Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here and you've never watched one of my videos before, I like to do lots of sewing here. I make sewing patterns, sewing tutorials, and I just love sharing it with you guys because this is the reason that I learned to sew, is because I wanted to make heirloom things for my children, for my family, and that's exactly what we're talking about today because we are making a fabric dollhouse. This is one of my favorite projects to date. The end result is so worth it because you have a dollhouse that your daughter can take on the go with her wherever she wants to. It's like a purse. She could wear it as a bag on her shoulder, and it's just the sweetest thing. And it also comes with a little mouse pattern as like the doll with clothes. So I'm really excited to get to show you guys how to make this today. If you're a visual learner like I am, hopefully this video tutorial is really helpful for you because I'm trying to go by each step and make sure that you guys understand what we're doing with each step. So as far as materials and fabric and cutting, all of that information, you can find this sewing pattern on my Etsy shop and it'll be linked below. And you can also see different reels of how I made it on my Instagram at Sarah's Day Off. So if you guys have any questions, you can send me a message here on Instagram or on my Etsy shop and I'll try to get back as fast as I can. Hope you guys love this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave me a comment, and if you love it, I hope that you guys give this video a thumbs up, and let's get into it. So the first thing that you're gonna do is take your decor pieces of fabric, and you can choose a couple different ones. I think I have a total of 3. I have this mauve pink and then 2 different floral ones, and this is mostly for just the pieces you're gonna put on your main dollhouse. So things like the fridge, the stove, tables, everything on the inside, and then the windows and doors on the outside. And to do all of this, for every item labeled as a double pattern piece on your physical sewing pattern, you're going to take your fabric and fold it in half. So this is going to create a double layer of fabric, and you're going to trace your pattern pieces on with a water soluble marker or some tailor's chalk, whatever you'd like. And you're going to take it to your sewing machine. Make sure that you transfer all of the notches that are included on the pattern pieces because this is where you're going to leave your openings. So you can see I've left some openings on different sides, and that's going to allow you to be able to turn it inside out or right side out. And after you have sewn all the stitches, don't worry about seam allowance, that's already included. All you have to do is trace them and then sew them, and then you're going to cut them, but make sure that you leave some seam allowance on the outside. You don't want to cut right up to the stitch because then it might fall apart. So on any curves or corners, you're going to make sure that you're snipping those corners like this so that it can, curves like this so that it can really turn nicely. And then on corners, you can see that I've taken the triangles off of the corners so that it can turn out nicely. And you might want to use a tube turner to be able to turn them. I definitely prefer using one of these, and it just makes it a lot easier since the pieces are so small. So you can see that I'm going back with another color. So I've decided on the front end which ones, like which items I want to be which colors, and then you simply trace again and sew and then cut. And for things that are labeled as 2, like you need to cut 2 of them or cut 3 of them, just make sure that you're tracing 2 or 3 of them. And again, this is only for the pattern pieces that are labeled as double pattern pieces because that means they need to be a double layer. And so you can see with this floral fabric, there is a right and wrong side of the fabric. So just make sure that you're tracing them with the wrong sides facing. With the right sides facing, because you want to make sure that when you turn them outside right, that the right sides are on the outside. And you do this for every single piece labeled as a double piece, and just make sure you can see here I'm transferring the notches, and it just makes it a lot easier. For things that have like a curve like this with the corner, snip in towards the corner. Do not cut the seam obviously, but just get right up close to it so that it's able to turn out really nicely. And then once you finish all of your pieces and you're happy with how they look, turn them right side out again and then give them a good press, but make sure you tuck that seam allowance into it so that it stays put. So next we're moving on to the felt pieces, and this is really simple. I just like to trace it with a water soluble marker first, and then I go back with my scissors and cut them all out. It's a lot easier than like pinning the pattern pieces to it and cutting it out. I just like doing the tracing. Okay, you guys, I'm sitting here editing this video and I just want to make sure it's extra crystal clear to please look at the pattern template that's included in all of your downloads, because the template is going to show you exactly where to place everything and it's going to show you exactly how to stitch it. So where you need to stitch them and also how you need to place them with the notches, which are where the openings should be, so that the openings get sewn over and don't end up just hanging out on some random side. So please look at that, and also it will tell you your exterior main dollhouse piece and your interior main dollhouse piece. When you're placing the pieces on them, they need to be facing different ways because it'll be folded in together. So you just need to make sure that you're placing them on the right side with everything facing the right direction, and the template will show you how to do that. So just don't skip that piece of the downloads. So once you've looked at your pattern template that's included in your downloads, you're going to grab your roof line piece and you're going to line it up, the raw edge, you're going to line up the raw edge of your roof line piece to the notches that are on the pattern. So that should be on the main body. And just make sure that your exterior piece is facing the right direction when you do this. You want to have that single side on one side and then the double side on the other. And just make sure you're doing it the right way. And you're going to sew a line across with a 1/4 inch of a seam allowance. So you're going to stay a 1/4 inch away from that raw edge of the roof line. And that's just going to make it so that you can press it up in the next step, and when you iron it, it'll be flush with the bottom piece. And next we're going to work on the handles and the ties. And this is the same process pretty much for both of them. You're going to take them lengthwise, fold them in half, and then you're going to press that because that's going to give you a little line. And then you're going to fold those edges in towards the center and then fold it again lengthwise. And that's just going to give you a really nice handle and a really nice tie, and you can pin along the edge and press. And you can see more photos of how I do this in your tutorial, but essentially they're all the same. So you're just going to sew a straight line along the side to enclose the raw edges. And the next step is embroidery, and this is optional, but I do feel like it adds a really nice touch to your project. And for almost all of the embroidery I did, I used a chain stitch, which you can find a tutorial on exactly how to do that here. And then also I used a French knot, which is a really simple embroidery stitch that you can find lots of videos on how to do. But I just got creative with the way that I wanted each piece to look. You can totally do whatever you want, but just kind of make a draft of what you want it to look like in your heat erasable pen or water soluble marker, whichever one. I just prefer this. And just get creative with it, and then use your chain stitch or whichever stitch you would like, and go ahead and embroider those. And for the scallops on the roof line, I just used a button to trace like a circle, half circle, and made the scallops that way. You can do it whichever way you want, and you don't have to add scallops. You could add literally anything that you want to. Again, just get creative with it. But if you are wanting to do the scallops, a button is a great way to draw a circle. And then I also include a tutorial on how to do a chain stitch here. And the next step is placing everything. So we're gonna just fold up your dollhouse just like you would. You can see how it's kind of constructed, but I just like to press it to get those lines so I can see where is the top and where is the bottom. And then I just went and started putting everything on there. I look at it first before I pin everything down, but again, please look at your pattern template, because this is going to show you where to put your pieces and also what kind of stitch they are. So if they're a single piece of fabric like these windows on the front are, you're going to use a zigzag stitch to attach them because we don't want those raw edges to fray. If it's a double piece of fabric like this window box right here, you're going to use just a straight stitch. But the pattern template is going to show you where to make your stitches and where to place them so that your notches get closed, your openings get closed. Because if it is a pocket, you don't want one of the opening to be left unstitched. So just make sure you look at that and you'll see where to place them, which way to face the opening so that it gets sewn over. And you can do everything at the same time, or just do your whole exterior part and then your interior part. But the most important thing is to make sure that they're facing the right direction. So you can see the garden room is on the left here, and the bathroom and laundry room is on the right. So you want to make sure that when you do your interior, it looks like this. and go back to the exterior part of the video where I showed you and do it exactly how I did it so that everything is facing the right direction once the dollhouse is folded up. And I like to do my felt pieces first because I just feel like it's simple, and it's usually the backing of most things have felt, so it's nice to get those ready first. But I also like to place everything just so I can see exactly where everything is going. And again, please look at your pattern template because it's so important that you don't stitch on 1/4 inch of the perimeter, because we want to leave room for seam allowance once we sew everything together. So you'll see I didn't sew anything on close to the edges. You want to leave about 1/4 inch worth of a gap around the edges so that you have some seam allowance. And once you finish that, there's a little tricky thing with the curtain. You're going to want to sew a basting stitch, which is a gathering stitch, and to do that you just tie a knot on the sides after you sew your basting stitch to hold it in place, and then just gather everything up, hold onto that bobbin thread, gather everything up, and then you're going to stitch it on. And there's really no perfect way to do this. You just pin it on there where you want it and then stitch it on there. And then afterwards I stitched everything else. And again, hopefully I haven't said this not enough times, but you want to look at the pattern template to know where to make your stitches so you don't have to rip anything off. And the next piece is this little 3-inch piece of elastic. You could use something different if you want to. I just had it laying around, so I thought it was a good thing to use. And just stitch it on there and hand sew buttons on there just to hide those raw edges and for a little bit of some cute factor. And then once you finish that, you pretty much have the inside finished, and the next step is to work on your pillow. And the pillow is sewn the same way as your double piece of fabric would be, but your double pattern pieces would be, but you're gonna have to stuff it with some polyfill and then close it with a ladder stitch. And if you've never done a ladder stitch before, here is a video tutorial on how to do that. I tried to do a really simple tutorial because it is a really heavily used stitch in all of my projects because I'm usually closing a lot of openings, so this is just a really good one to know how to do. And for the next step, your exterior piece is going to be sewn to a piece of flannel fabric that just adds a little bit of structure. It's optional, but I do feel like it helps just keep everything having some good structure. And then if you haven't already, go ahead and transfer your notches that are on the roof line. This is your handles and your ties. So this will show you exactly where to place the handles and ties. And you just place them very simply like this. But the most important thing with the tie is that you have the raw edge pinned to the raw edge. So in your tutorial, in the PDF tutorial, you'll see that you have to have one of the sides closed in on itself. Just make sure that one's not being sewn to the raw edge because you want that one that's closed to be the one that's out of the dollhouse. And then once you do that, you're going to add your interior piece right sides facing, and this is pretty much almost the last step. And you're going to pin everything together, but make sure you leave about a 5-inch opening on the side of the bathroom and the laundry room, and that's going to help you turn everything right sides out. And after you sew around the edges, go ahead and cut the corners off, and then also do that same cut in towards the seam on any corners so that it can turn out nicely. I sometimes like to cut off the bulk of the handles just because it can be a little bulky, but you don't have to do that. And then take everything, turn it right sides out. It might take some maneuvering, but use the handles to help you. And then once you get to this point, you're just going to make sure you push those corners out really nicely. And give everything one last final press. And then the last thing is to pin up that side spot. It can help if you press the seam allowance in, and then give it a good pin, and then sew across it on right against the edge about 1/8 of an inch in from the from the side. And after you finish this, you are done. So that is how to make your very own fabric dollhouse. I hope you guys loved this video, and again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask me. This was one of my favorite things to make, and I hope you guys love it so much.